Welcome back to the Revealed Report. Well, there are some that are questioning, is Trump losing his power effectively and becoming a lame duck president? However, we see that that's not the case. Trump is still powerful. He's still in the driver's seat of MAGA. Some are saying, well, there's division and there's a divide in MAGA. And is Trump really the true MAGA? And is he losing his base? And is he losing the grip? And is he losing his power and his position with the movement? However, we can see that Marjorie Traitor Greene would go out there and was bashing Trump, subtly bashing Trump for over a month, and went out there on The View and started sounding like a Liz Cheney, sounding a little more lib in her language and trying to be kind and going out and apologizing to CNN for her rhetoric, which is exactly what all the reprobate conservatives do when they begin to turn their back on President Trump and they begin to try to cozy up to the left and begin to try to win their favor because they're losing their own base. And so we find that Marjorie Traitor Greene went out there and she kept trying to really bring Trump into questioning. And then Trump effectively ended her whole political career with one Truth Social. One Truth Social by President Donald Trump began to upend her political career. So for anybody who thinks that President Trump is losing his power and is becoming an effectiveless lame duck president, that's just not the case at all. President Trump is still in the driver's seat of MAGA. And as a matter of fact, without President Trump, there is no MAGA. President Trump is the MAGA. And so this whole ideology that Trump is not the true MAGA is a complete farce. And it's being fueled by some bad players. And it's a psy-ops, even by people that are not in the United States of America, which we'll talk about with this article that just recently came out, thanks to Elon Musk and the change in X. And just changing a few settings began to tell us a whole different story. But you find that this is how it's been ever since President Trump came down the escalator. You had some that was for him, some that never believed in him, the never Trumpers, and then you had the left that wanted to destroy him. And for 8 years, or, it will be 8 years. It's actually been even more than that because under the Biden administration, they still wanted to go after President Trump. But throughout the whole duration of his political career, we find that President Trump is always being attacked by the radical left. They try to throw everything they can at him to see what's going to stick. They'll end up getting their trumped up charges and try to make him look like he's a felon in some trumped up court case. They try to do anything they can. The Russian collusion hoax from a Steele dossier bought and paid for by by Hillary Clinton, everything they can do to try to destroy him, destroy his family. And yet over and over again, as the radical left lies to the general public, as the mainstream media, the drive-by media lies to the general public, you find that many on the right begin to question President Trump and they begin to lose trust and confidence in him. And some begin to even join the other side, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, and then Marjorie Traitor Greene. And the moment that they go out on CNN and the moment they go out on The View or anything like that, and they want to cozy up with Whoopi Goldberg and that, it's a sure tell sign that they're going to fall. And the truth of the matter is, I was never a big Marjorie Taylor Greene fan. I really wasn't. I always suspected there was something a little off about her. And anytime they go out on CNN and they begin to talk about the rhetoric of the right, what they're really doing is they're cowering because they're losing. They're losing in their own party. And here she talked about Trump multiple times. Trump finally speaks back out, and one Truth Social post begins to bring her political career down, which goes to show you that President Trump is not a lame duck president yet. He has not lost his power. He's still in effect. He's still driving the MAGA movement. And we need to understand that without President Trump, there would not have been a MAGA, Make America Great Again movement. Without President Trump, we would have never had a voice like we have on the conservative right. It was President Trump that went up against the machine. It was President Trump that began to punch back on the mainstream media. It was President Trump that began to expose the deception of the deep state. It was President Trump that went against the globalist agenda. It was President Trump that was willing to go before the UN and begin to tear down the idea of globalism and restore America back to its founding principles. And yes, he's going up against a heavy machine. I don't think there's anybody that can upend it all in 8 years. And yet they will say, well, because he didn't upend or drain the complete swamp, he's not doing what he promised he would do. Nobody would have been able to pull that off, and nobody would have done more than President Trump has. He's been the most consequential president in my personal lifetime. And I believe he's even more consequential than Ronald Reagan himself, which I am a Reagan fan. Marjorie Traitor Greene, if she was the president of the United States, would have never had the effect that President Trump has had. None of them would have. And so they all want to ride on the coattails of President Trump, and then they're willing to turn their back on him when they think it's going to be in their political favor. And some of this, I believe, is because they know that President Trump is entering into what is normally a lame duck presidency. And so then the Republican Party has to go and find who's going to be the next rising stars, and how are they going to shape the Republican Party, and what direction are they going to take it in, and what voices are going to rise up. And so you see that there's some now that's trying to make a name for themselves by saying we're the true MAGA because we are America first. And really what they are is American isolationism. And they thought that was going to appeal to the general public and try to say, well, Trump is not really America first because he supports Israel and he is involved in these foreign affairs and that. And so he's really not the true Make America First and Make America Great Again president. We are that. And they're trying to ride on the coattails of President Trump and then turn on him, the Steve Bannons, the Marjorie Traitor Greenes. They're trying to ride on the coattails of what Trump pioneered, and then they're trying to throw him under the bus when they feel like it's political advantageous to them. The only problem is that most people are actually not against Israel. It is true that there is rising anti-Semitism among the younger people in the United States of America, but that is being exacerbated by many lies that they're being exposed to on social media. Most people today are getting a lot of their information from X. They're getting it from social media. And we have found out over the weekend that most of the people that are pushing the anti-Semitism on social media are bad foreign actors trying to meddle in the affairs of the United States of America. I give it to you. If I was Rush Limbaugh, I would say in between my formerly nicotine-stained fingers. From the New York Post, new X feature exposes MAGA fakes as based far outside the United States. I quote, a crucial new about this account feature on X just exposed dozens of anti-Israel MAGA accounts as originating outside of the United States. Starting Friday, Elon Musk's social media company has been slowly rolling out the feature that lets users see where other accounts are based. That several influential anti-Israel accounts aren't what they seem upends the idea that President Trump supporters are turning against Israel or even embracing anti-Semitism. There is strong U.S. relationship and approved of Trump's attack on Iran's nuclear sites, as well as his diplomatic success in freeing Israel's hostages. But a rise in anti-Israel and anti-Semitic content on conservative podcasts and social media has added to existing concerns about growing anti-Semitism on the left. While the phenomenon of anti-Semitism is real on both extremes of the political spectrum, it now appears that some of the far-right variety may simply have been fake or based abroad. One anti-Israel account at 1776 General, which describes itself as constitutionalist and links to an ethnic American website, appears to be based in Turkey, according to the new X feature. Some accounts belonging to so-called Groypers, that is, followers of white supremacist Nick Fuentes, appears to be based abroad as well, including in Africa and Asian countries. Other accounts purporting to represent Americans opposed to Israel are also based overseas. One such account is at Counter APAC, describes itself as a grassroots movement advocating for balanced U.S. policies in the Middle East and the world. Its handle refers to the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or APAC, a pro-Israel group. It turns out it's based in Egypt. Once exposed, the owner of the account claimed to be an American citizen born in Egypt, adding, "My location has nothing to do with my anti-Zionist and anti-supremacy position." An account purporting to represent anti-Israel Jews in New York at Torah Judaism is shown as being from the Philippines. Far-right extremist Jackson Hinkle, who attended the funeral of terrorist leader Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon last year, complained that some pro-Israel accounts has been exposed as foreign as well. But his own account is based in West African nation of Burkina Faso. I assume I get that right. Several accounts that purport to be reporting from Gaza or Palestine turn out to be from far away. The Times of Gaza, with the handle at Times of Gaza, has nearly 1 million followers. It claims to provide the latest news updates and the top stories from occupied Palestine. But the account is based in East Asia and Pacific, according to the new X feature. Pro-Israel pundits are outraged. Literally every single commentary account that spreads nonstop lies is foreign, wrote commentary Yalal Yakoboy, who is based in the United States. Another notes that many of the accounts have been subverting the U.S. by flooding X with anti-American, anti-Israel, demoralizing or Marxist content aimed specifically at Americans. Pro-Israel billionaire Bill Ackman noted that some accounts purporting to be journalists based in Gaza have been quoted recently by mainstream media sources, including the New York Times and the BBC, posting they should immediately launch an investigation of which articles relied on fake journalists and issue corrections. Some said the revelations accounted to a massive foreign influence operation aimed at driving up anti-Israel sentiments in the United States and at splitting the MAGA movement to weaken Trump, end quote. So let me tell you what this is. What this is there is indeed a growing anti-Semitism, especially among young people, that's being influenced by social media and some voices that are trying to branch out and be the revolutionaries of the day to try to fight against the power of the day, which would be like Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and Jihadi Candy Owens and other ones such like. And what they're trying to say is that anti-Semitism is actually greater than what it is, because now we see that there is a psy-ops taking place. There are a lot of bad foreign players that has nothing to do with the United States of America that are anti the West, that want to take the West down, and also because there is some division right now in the MAGA conservative side of the aisle. They want to play on that to try to break up the MAGA movement, to try to destroy the conservative right. This is a psyops by people that hate Israel, but be sure they also hate the United States of America. This is a psyops against the West. And I'm glad that Elon Musk in a patriotic way began to expose it. So now we know that even though there is a rise of anti-Semitism, a lot of the things that you're reading inside of those comment sections on our YouTube channels are nothing more than lifeless bots, just fake accounts created by these foreign people that hate Israel, hate the United States of America, hate the MAGA movement, hate Trump, and hate the West. And I've said it many, many times. People thought I was actually being crude and mean when I would say, here's another lifeless bot, as if I was saying that about the person. I just knew these are fake accounts. You go and look at it, you can tell they're fake accounts, and they're always targeting against Israel. But yet we're supposed to believe that Israel has taken over everything. Israel controls the media. Israel controls all of the social media. Israel controls the politicians. Israel controls our government. Israel controls Trump, and Trump is Bibi's puppet. And yet in all of this, what we actually find out is that this is a psyops. Yes, they are playing on some people that are anti-Semitic, but it's not as big as what people think. And yet they are trying to fuel an anti-Semitic rage. And I promise you that if it continues on, these people will not just be anti-Semitic, they'll be anti-America as well, because they rewrite history to demonize the West. It's the same tactic as the radical left. This is why I no longer respect Tucker Carlson like I used to. I no longer respect the Jihadi Candy Owens like I used to. I don't respect Nick Fuentes like a lot of the young people are starting to rise up. And now we can see that most of their social media accounts and most of their podcasts are not as big as what we would think they are. And I know that Candy Owens, she has 5 million plus followers, #1 top podcast in the United States, in the world right now, supposedly according to the numbers. But now what we can see is there's a mixture of things going on. Number one, there is a lot of ladies that seem to like to follow Jihadi Candy Owens. And it's because Crime Scene Investigations is one of the number one biggest podcasts right now in the world. And so she is kind of playing into that. She's always leaving cliffhangers. Come back next day and there's going to be some new breaking news, always cliffhangers, always promising something greater, always playing into the sensational, always playing into women that want to take people down, always playing into the crime scene investigation desire. And the whole time we're also seeing that many of the subscribers are lifeless bots that are just chiming in and going into the comment section and subscribing and helping drive up those numbers because they are wanting to fracture the MAGA movement, and they're wanting to take down America's partnership with Israel, to stand against our democracy ally over in the Middle East, and to side with those that say death to America and death to Israel. Now, I can have the conversation on how much foreign aid we should or should not be given. That's fine. Let's talk about that. But most of this is wrapped up with the deceit to try to take Israel down, to try to turn our back on our ally. And you cannot do that and not expect that to eventually be a problem for the United States of America. It is in our best interest to have an ally who is also able to weaken Iran, because we did not just go and take out the nuclear facility. Israel was weakening them before we ever did that. There's nothing wrong with having partners. Now they want to talk about AIPAC, but they don't talk about CARE, which also is now a domestic terrorist group in Texas, because they're trying to infiltrate the education system and make radicals against the United States of America, which, by the way, were the ones that were funding Mom Donnie in New York City. I don't want to hear about Israel. Let's talk about the Islamist takeover in many, like Dearborn, Michigan. Now we can see in New York City that there's an Islamist that is now the mayor of New York. Let's talk about the infiltration of the Islamists into our nation that do not assimilate to democracy. They do not assimilate to a republic. They bring in the ideas of Mecca right into the United States of America. They believe that they're defeating the West. They're trying to push Sharia law wherever they can. And if you listen to Tucker Carlson, he tells you it's not really a big deal anyway. Sharia's law really doesn't even really exist. It's all a downplaying of the enemy trying to infiltrate our system and take our system over. And yet they are also having 12, 13, 14 kids, while Americans are told to have 1, 2, wait till you're 30 or 40 years old before you even consider having such a family. And so the concern is not whether or not Trump's base is turning on him because of his support of Israel, because the majority of United States of American citizens still support Israel and still supported the president on his taking out the nuclear facility. As a matter of fact, Harry Enton at CNN told us just recently that Trump's foreign policy is over 60% of an approval rating. So the American people, by large, is not turning against Trump. Now, there is a concern I have. Now, I support Vice President J.D. Vance, but I do have a concern that his approach may be different than President Trump. I also think that some of this is because of who their friends are, because there is friendship with J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson's son. And I'm not trying to say that Tucker Carlson's son has the same views as Tucker Carlson, but I'm not very comfortable with how close that friendship is, to be honest with you. I am praying that either J.D. Vance follows in the footsteps of President Trump on this, or that somebody else becomes the president next, because I am concerned that this political psyops that is taking place by foreign bad actors is trying to play on the minds of younger generations that are spending a lot of time on X, a lot of time on social media, and beginning to pollute their mind to turn them against the president of the United States. And I think this was actually what messed Marjorie Traitor Greene up, because when you go out there, it looks like most people are turning their back on Israel. And I think that she thought, well, most people aren't for the support of Israel, so I'm going to play that card, and I'm going to be the America First verse that we shouldn't be supporting Israel. We shouldn't be meddling in the affairs over in the Middle East. And she was going to try to appeal to the base and thinking that she could break them away from Trump and break them towards her. And she found out it doesn't work that way, because most of this is a political psyops. The United States of America, the conservative right, stands with President Trump far more than the Marjorie Traitor Greene. Trust me. We stand with a President Trump far more than any other so-called MAGA on the conservative right. You know why? Because it wasn't Marjorie Traitor Greene coming down that escalator that went before the UN and began to defeat their globalist ideology. It wasn't Marjorie Traitor Greene that began to expose the deep state and punch back on the mainstream media. She came after President Trump. And so we're not turning our back on the president. I don't understand why so many people are so limp-wristed and so weak that when the radical left comes out with something else, there's some on the right that begin to question Trump and lose faith and lose confidence in him after time and time and time again, he has proved himself. Time and time again, he has defeated the left, and his policies have brought a greater good. And so now, do I think he can get the affordability rate? I think it's going to be very challenging. I think, though, if people would quit questioning him on these H-2B visas, he'd be fine. The jobs report is up, and now he's trying to get as many people as he can inside of those jobs so he can crank up the supply so it brings the prices down. It also brings inflation down, and it brings the interest rates down as well. And so I think people need to back up and let him keep working. He's usually 4 and 5 and 6 steps ahead of all of us. There's some people that says, well, he doesn't really have a plan. Yes, he usually does have a plan. And the plan there is the H-2B visas is to dump a bunch of people into jobs, drive up the supply, bring the prices down, cut the interest rates, bring the inflation down, and that brings affordability, because it's harder to get people out of a mindset of not working to working. Yes, I'm sure he wants every American to fill those seats, but right now, to get the affordability rate there, he's just trying to get workers there to get the supply up. And I think that the ones that think that President Trump is losing his grip, anybody in the MAGA movement that believes that President Trump is losing his grip, let Marjorie Traitor Greene be a perfect example. Just like Liz Cheney, just like the Adam Kinzingers, they thought that they can turn their back on President Trump and win the people over. And you find out that he outlives every one of their political careers. And he outlasts the reprobate dissenters that begin to stab him in the back. And I think it's pathetic that people would stab him in the back anyways. I mean, we ought to be honoring him for everything he did. He didn't have to do it. He didn't have to go as a billionaire and put himself in a place where he almost got a bullet in the head. He did it for the American people. And I believe the American people owe it back to him to give him opportunities and not scrutinize him on every little thing when he has proven himself over and over again to beat our opposition. So I think we need to be praying for the President of the United States. I think the Steve Bannons, the Tucker Carlsons, the Jihadi Candy Owens are making a grave, grave mistake. And I believe those that are trying to figure out how to position themselves because they think that Trump's going into a lame duck presidency, and so they need to try to figure out how they're going to shape the MAGA movement. What they need to do is just follow in the footsteps and continue on this legacy. That's what they need to do. And if they do that, they'll be perfectly fine. If they do that, they'll have the support that they need, because Trump has outlasted all of the dissenters. He's going to outlast the Steve Bannons. He's going to outlast every one of them that is turning their back on him. And so we need to defeat the political psyops, and we need to be victorious. We need to keep winning. We need to win the midterms. We need to win 2028. Now, I'm not fretting and worrying because there's a divide. This always happens. We defeated the radical left. Now we're seeing the fracture of differences within the right. That's not your normal. That takes place. It's okay. I think Trump is just going to keep plowing through, and we're going to get behind him, and we're going to support the President of the United States, and we're not turning our back on Israel. Now, I think it's absolutely funny because a lot of people would love to paint President Trump as being intolerable. I mean, he's just mean. He's unreasonable all the time. He's just an ugly, ugly man. He just tries to defeat everybody. We ought to know better, because remember, little Marco Rubio became big Marco Rubio, and he's doing a wonderful job. How many times did Trump take them down and then turn around and partner up with them? Now we even see it with Mom Donnie. Remember when he said that he was going to cut off the federal funding of Mom Donnie if he got in to being mayor of New York City, that he would totally cut off much of the federal funding to him, and he called him a Marxist, socialist, Marxist, Islamist. And yet now you find that President Trump is talking with Mom Donning right in the Oval Office. And I think it's absolutely hilarious. And this is one of the things we absolutely love about our president. And here it is.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes. Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining.
It's absolutely hilarious. They're asking him, are you affirming that you believe that Trump is a fascist? And as he's trying to explain himself, I mean, he's caught off guard. What's he going to say with President Trump sitting right there? And President Trump says, it's okay. You can call me a fascist. It's easier than trying to explain yourself. And so anybody that thinks he's absolutely unreasonable, why has he got Mom Donnie right there? Why has he got the one that keeps calling him a fascist, that says he's going to stand against him, stand against his ICE agents, and President Trump brings them right in there? And for anybody on the right that's questioning what President Trump is trying to do, and they're questioning if he's trying to throw out Marjorie Traitor Greene and he's trying to cozy up to the Mom Donnies, absolutely not. President Trump is a businessman, and he's very influential. He knows how to grab people and pull them to him. That's why he had the largest rallies of any president of the United States, of any politician in U.S. history. He knows how to get people to gravitate towards him. And so it's really up to Mom Donnie. He's bringing Mom Donnie in. He's willing to work with him. He's being very kind to him because he's not unreasonable. Trump is just a fighter. If you punch him, he's going to punch you back. If you go to attack him, he's going to attack you back. He is a fighter. He's a New York City fighter. However, he's not unreasonable, and he's not intolerable. And he brings Mom Donnie in, and he tells Mom Donnie, go ahead and call me a fascist, because he knows this is just sport. It's political sport. It's a political battle. We are in an ideological, spiritual, and political battle. So he brings Mom Donnie in, and he's going to try to work with Mom Donnie. Now it's up to Mom Donnie. If Mom Donnie really cares about the well-being of New York City, because he's finding out he doesn't have all the money it's going to take to come through with all of his promises. Now that he's becoming the mayor of New York City, he doesn't have the money, and the taxpayers are going to get out of there like it's the Exodus of Egypt. They're going to go down to Florida. They're going to go to Texas. They're going to go to Tennessee. So he knows that he's in financial trouble if he doesn't have their tax dollars, even though he says they need to, like former President Biden, they need to pay their fair share. They're already paying almost half of all the taxes. 48% is being paid by the top 1%. And so now that he wants to try to drive their businesses out, and so radical, he said, not even if they don't even have to be based in New York City. They can be based somewhere else. If they're doing business in New York City, he's going to tax them at a higher rate. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to let your city go to hell in a handbasket. It's what they're going to do, and let it be full of the rats that you're not going to have money to take care of. So he knows he can't come through on his promises. So if he really wants to help New York City, he's going to play ball with President Trump. But it doesn't appear that's the case, because immediately when he gets out there, he's got to go appeal to his radical base and start calling him a fascist again, because he doesn't want the AOCs to turn on him, or the Ilhan Omars, or the radical left that has infiltrated and taken over the very Democrat Party. And by the way, this is a warning that on the Republican side of the aisle, we can't have the milquetoast Republicans or the far alt-right infiltrating our party and taking it over. We need to stay with President Trump, who is the MAGA movement. There is no MAGA without President Trump. And the truth of the matter is, there probably won't be a MAGA after President Trump. We'll just have somebody doing their best in the shadows. Kind of like when Michael Jordan left the NBA for a long time, it was a lot of shadows. I mean, you can consider some other basketball players that came on the scene too, but it was never the same for a long period of time. And so there's not going to be another President Trump. He is the most consequential president in the last 100 years, probably. And so I think that Mamdani has a choice to make. Does he really care about New York City? And if he does, behind closed doors, he can try to appeal to his base, but behind closed doors, he has to be willing to work with President Trump. And the reason why President Trump wants to work with him is because Trump loves New York City. That's his original home base. He has a heart for it, and he wants it to do well. And this shows you that President Trump cares about the American people above his own political position, his own political power, his own political prestige and name. He really cares about people. That's why he, as a billionaire who could have been playing golf for the rest of his life, goes down and takes all of this character assassination and abuse to his family because he cares about the American people. And he's putting it on full display by caring about the New Yorkers, by actually caring about the well-being of the New Yorkers, even so much that he's willing to try to work with his political opposition that's continuously calling him a fascist. This is because Trump cares about people more than he cares about his title. And I think that's honorable. We haven't had that in a very, very long time. Some of the Republicans would have been calling him out and pointing their finger and trying to put on the display that they're tough. He begins to just slap him on the arm and says, you can call me a fascist. It's okay. It's easier than trying to explain it. But now Mamdani, I'm afraid that the radical left, for the most part, I'll be absolutely shocked if he's willing to negotiate with President Trump behind scenes. Most of the time, they want to act like they're going to chest bump him just to get knocked flat on their back. Because now what happens is the radical left have to play to their base. They want to go out and play to their base and try to be the most extreme and the strongest and the toughest. Oh, yeah, I went against the evil orange man who's bad. I went against him. I flexed my political muscles and I stood up against the bully, who actually President Trump was the one that stood up against the bully. Let's not flip the script. It was the bully called the deep state. It was the bully called the mainstream media. It was the bully, the ones that was infiltrating our system and trying to take us into a great reset. That was the bully. And Trump was the David that stood against the Goliath and began to bring Goliath down. So let's not get the script backwards. For all the radical left that wants to paint it that he's the Goliath that has to be taken down. No, he was the David, as far as it goes in the political arena, that took the Goliath down. He was the outside disruptor that came in and was a hand grenade on their charade in their party and began to expose all of the corruption and all the evil. And of course, Marjorie Traitor Greene's going to do like Liz Cheney and every one of them does when they begin to be upended in their political career. They're going to try to throw grenades behind their back because they're really upset with Trump because he took them down. And so I don't listen to people that are upset because they got fired or their political career got upended and they have to resign in embarrassment because they began to be double-minded and they began to cozy up with the radical left. And I never thought she was fully trustworthy anyways. I've had people say, well, she was great. She was great. I'm not going to say she didn't do great things, but I never was a super big Marjorie Traitor Greene fan. I really wasn't. I always thought there was something that was off there. And so I think that President Trump is doing to Mamdani what a businessman does. He says, well, you won. Now let's see what we can do. And it's really not on Trump. It's on Mamdani, how Mamdani is going to operate. But this is the problem with the radical left. The radical left does not really care about the people. They care about their political position, their power, their authority. They care about their name. They care about the history book and what they're going to be called or whatever, or some book and insider trading and all of those things. That's what they care about. They don't really care about the people because Mamdani could help the city of New York if he would be willing to negotiate with Trump and quit calling him a fascist. President Trump is saying, you can call me a fascist. I really don't care. I'm trying to help the American people. I'm trying to help the people of New York City. And so which one would you prefer to have? I'm glad to have the President of the United States. And I'm glad to know now that all of these attacks that are coming out on my social media account and all these attacks on my YouTube comment section is just because of political psy-ops, which I was right. They're just lifeless bots. And so when you can't win, you just go create a bunch of lifeless bots and you try to take us down. But it's not going to work. And the reason why it's not going to work is because we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep exposing all the lies and all the deception. And we're going to keep calling Americans back to this great country. And I want to say this, since it's Thanksgiving week, and I'll talk more about it later on in the week. I want to tell you that America is great, and we have what's called American exceptionalism. America is not exceptional because God just likes us more than everybody else. America is not exceptional because we're smarter, or we're brighter, or we're better looking. Some of us are. Or any of those things. America is not exceptional just because the people or God just favors us more or likes us more, or we're just the absolute apple of God's eye. It's none of those things. America is an exceptional place. The American exceptionalism is based on the fact that it is the exception to the norm, that in all of human history there was tyranny, there was dictators and rulers and kings, and there was serfdom where you had the power at the top and all of the peasants at the bottom. That was most of human history, where you had the government that was all powerful and the people that was under the boot of government and had to fear the government all the time. But America was a new charter path in human history, where for the first time it was the government that worked for the people and not the other way around. That government was to represent the people and not the other way around. That the government was for the people, by the people, ran by the people. And that we had a duly elected process, and that it was a republic where their president and our senators and all of that represented the people, and that the power was at the lower level rather than at the top. And that people were represented through their legislators, and the power was really at the local level more than at the federal level, even though that we wanted a powerful, strong, limited federal government. The idea of a limited government was an exception to the rule in human history, an idea where the people actually rule. That is an exception in American history. The idea that you don't have to fear the religion of the state like through the dark ages, and that you can pursue after God from your own heart and assimilate with the people that have the same views and not have to fear the king, was an exception to the rule. The ability to have the freedom of the press and the freedom of religion like we do in the United States of America, to have an armed populace to make sure that the government never becomes too bossy and controls every aspect of your life, was the exception to the rule. The American dream, where you can come and work hard and you can apply yourself and everybody goes up. The idea that through capitalism, we have supported more humanitarian aid in all of the world than any other country. We have supported more missionary works in all of the world than any other country. That is the American exceptionalism. It is not the fact of our rights and our wrongs all the time. It is not our perfections or imperfections. American exceptionalism is because we are the exception to the rule, and we have the greatest human experiment in all human history, maybe second to ancient Israel, of course, because now we have a place where we are the land of the home of the brave and the land of the free, where people gave their life so that we can be free and have a government that represents us rather than us representing the government. That is what makes America beautiful. That is what makes America great. And it's important that we have a generation that realizes that. It's America that was chartering the path to end slavery and segregation because of the Declaration of Independence, counterintuitive to what every mainstream leftist wants to tell you today. Without that, we would have never ended slavery. We would have never ended segregation. It was those founding principles that believed that we have these certain inalienable rights endowed to us from our Creator God, that in the heart of everybody is the desire for freedom because God designed it that way. And that government government is to protect those rights, not to grant those rights, to protect those rights. This has been unheard of in human history until America would rise up and come on the scene. And so on this Thanksgiving week, and by the way, the true Thanksgiving, and we'll talk about it later on. Rush Limbaugh used to talk about it all the time, and we're going to carry on the legacy of such. But once upon a time, we knew the true history of Thanksgiving. Now they teach it that the Pilgrims were only thankful for the Indians that helped them survive. That is not the fullness of the case. They were thankful for the Indians, but the thanksgiving was not towards the Indians. It was actually towards God. It was towards God, yes, for using them, but the true thanksgiving was actually a thanksgiving to God, that they survived the harshness of the sea. They survived the harshness of the winter, and God's hand of providence was on them that brought them to a land of freedom, where they no longer had to fear religious persecution, that they didn't have to worry about Holland destroying the younger generation with all of its evil wickedness that was polluting and corrupting the mind of their young people. And so they came to the United States of America to teach the nation a pure value of thanksgiving unto the Lord. And so I'm glad on this Thanksgiving week that we are living in the United States of America. And I'm glad that we have an ally with Israel. And I don't care what all of these modern so-called new MAGA voices that are going against our president is saying. It is a psyops by bad foreign players, and we need to stay true to the true MAGA movement. And I'm thankful that God raised President Trump up. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying I agree with every little thing he says or does, but I'm glad that we have the president of the United States that came in and disrupted the leftist party and the globalist agenda. And so on this Thanksgiving, I am so grateful and thankful for the freedoms of the United States of America. And I'm glad that this past Sunday, I was able to wake up my family and take them to church on Sunday, and we didn't have the fear of the authorities that was going to put us in some political prison. And so we need to come back to a love for America. This is a great nation, and I'm glad that Trump revitalized in the heart of people to make America great again. American exceptionalism. And now America is not great because you just get a handout, but rather America is great because it gives you an opportunity to pursue a dream, to work hard, to apply yourself, and to continually rise above and become greater and greater throughout the duration of your lifetime. And usually as you get older, you become more free, more liberty, and more financial security. That's the beauty of the United States of America. I love this land. I love our nation. And I'm grateful for the president of the United States. That doesn't mean that I like everything he says all the time, but I'm glad that we are not in Calamity Commie Harris's America. I'm glad we're not in a radical leftist America. And for that reason, we need to be reminded of how bizarre crazy they were, so we never go back. We are not going back to that. We need to ensure that we continue down this path of winning. After President Trump is gone out of office, we need to carry on the voice that people are going to get tired of winning. And so we need to continue on with the path of this. And I'm glad there's a president that's trying to make our city streets safe. I'm glad there's a president that's making sure fentanyl's not pouring across the border, to make sure MS-13's not coming across the border, making sure that terrorists can't come across the border and try to do damage on our nation. I'm glad that he's making sure that cartels are not bringing pounds and pounds of cocaine into our country. And I'm glad that he's trying to work on the affordability rate, even though many people are questioning the H-2B visas. Just back off and let him do his job. And I think it's going to work out. And I think he could surprise us again. Well, America, it is Thanksgiving week. I plan on being on air tomorrow evening, and God willing, Wednesday. And we're going to try to put out a special Thanksgiving service, thinking about church there, a special Thanksgiving episode for you that's going to talk about America, the true Thanksgiving. America, I love you. I know the church is going to be staying. Oh, if you haven't got it yet, and you like novel mystery thrillers packed with suspense, a lot of plot twists, and good, clean romance, you ought to check out The Final Flame. You can get it on Amazon, or if you want a signed copy, you can email us at revealpublications@gmail.com, and we can give you the details on how to get your signed edition of The Final Flame. Well, the church will be standing tomorrow, for Jesus said, upon this rock I have built my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But if the Republic is still standing tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow night. God bless you, America. Have a great night.